Welcome to Mercer Moments in American History. Today's program is called 57 Cents of Faith, an incredible true story of a 6-year-old girl from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her name is Hattie Mae Wyatt, W-I-A-T-T, and her faith, which she believed in. In the book of Hebrews, I call the Hall of Faith. It lists all these great leaders in the Bible, Moses and Abraham and Isaac and others, and it talks about, it says they had faith for what they hoped for, but would not see. Meaning that the things that they believed, that they had a promise, the faith they had, they hoped for it, but they actually never got to see it. It reminds me of Hattie Mae Wyatt, because the faith she had, what she hoped for, she never got to see. A wonderful story of American history that's going to be told today. My name is Ken Mercer. I'm known as the Minister of Education for two reasons that I'm pretty proud of. One, I fight for the rights of moms and dads to see what's being taught in our classrooms to your precious sons and daughters. But secondly, I believe there are great stories like 57 Cents of Faith somehow been erased, been deleted. Stories that should be shared, and I challenge you, maybe a great story for your minister, your priest, or your rabbi to share. 57 Cents of Faith. I begin every program with two quick things. Please hit the like or subscribe button, whether if you're on YouTube or if you're listening to our podcast. It's the only way we can grow. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it lets our sponsors know that Mercer Moments in American History is making a difference. And this is a great story of American history. I always give a shout out to one school, and today I'm giving a shout out to all the Baptist universities. I'm wearing Baylor University, but a shout out to all Baptist universities, our young men and women who love America and love God, but who love America, especially in today's political climate. Even in our Baptist universities, they need our encouragement. They need our prayers. Well, 57 Cents of Faith, the true story of 6-year-old Hattie Mae Wyatt. Are you ready? Well, let's do a quick level set. It was the beginning of the 20th century, and times were different back then. The churches were packed. Fire marshals would come into churches, and they had to give out tickets to the services. Now, the tickets didn't cost money, and the tickets did not even guarantee you a seat. It said, you want to go to the 9 o'clock service? We have this many seats available. And when those are taken, you have to go to the 11 o'clock service or 1 o'clock service, whatever. That's how crowded churches were back then. In fact, what I call the ETC Christians, Easter, T Thanksgiving, C Christmas, you had to get tickets sometimes months in advance to be able to even to get into a church. Again, you weren't guaranteed. You weren't told where you could sit at. You were told you could get in and get a seat. And the churches were packed. You know, when I was growing up, a little more background, I did some youth ministry when I was in college, and we had several small churches that sadly were going down in population. And I worked in the summer. We had, I made 2 Methodist churches, 2 Presbyterian, a Lutheran, other churches Baptists were working with, trying to bring the youth together for the summer, non-denominational, if you will, but just to have the kids something to do. And I was sad to see the churches were getting smaller and smaller, even when I was in college. But I was so impressed when I saw pictures of the founding of the churches. When they started these Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, Presbyterian churches, how they were packed. The churches were wall-to-wall shoulders. How the churches were packed. In fact, I studied the architecture of how they were built, and so many of them had glass walls in the back, what you would call crying rooms. They were so full, if you had a young baby or toddler, you can go to the back of the church. And the technology, I have to laugh now, but it was so great that they had 2 things. When I studied, I saw one in the Lutheran church and the Methodist church, and the ministers had buttons they could push from the pulpit, would go to the back of the church and tell the ushers, the choir was going to start. The service would begin. And they also had wires going to the back of the church. If you had a small child, a baby or toddler, you could go behind those glass walls, again, a crying room, if you will, and you could still hear the sermon coming in there. In fact, I found two of the churches even had wires going to their fellowship hall, where if they had an event after church, maybe a lunch or some other program, again, those who were setting things up could hear the sermon. That was the great technology. But my purpose is to tell you how those churches were. A few months ago, I was having breakfast with friends, and one of my brothers was complaining about his church we have to raise money now for our new parking lot. I said, really? And this is the 21st century. This is during and after the COVID years, if you will. And he would say, yeah, we bought some land. Now we got to pay to have it paved and have a driveway put in there and have it striped out. And we got to raise his money for a parking lot. And I laughed. He said, Mr. Mercer, what's so funny? I said, do you realize how many churches would love to have that as their number one problem, that had to buy a parking lot or pave or build a parking lot? You see, my friends, a story not told is since COVID here in America, there's about anywhere from 4,700 to 8,000 churches at least who are closing each and every year. And it's simple math, economics 101. If your monthly expenses are greater than your monthly donations, it's just like the talks that you have at your kitchen table at home. If every month you're spending more money than you're bringing in, you're in trouble. And you eat into your savings, as many churches did. But after so many months or years of post-COVID, guess what? The savings are going down, down, down. And it's sad to say again, and this is a very conservative number, 4,700 to 8,000 churches a year were closing forever because, again, their monthly expenses were much more than their monthly donations. Some people predict, I have one church leader group says that they believe there will almost be 100,000 churches will close between COVID and the next few years, 100,000. And I tell you that because, again, what it was at the turn of the century, to give you an idea of what it was like. Again, the churches were so full, they were giving out tickets. And the fire marshals, this is how many seats we have. Well, let's get back to Hattie Mae. I gave you a great level set. And what was Hattie Mae about? Hattie Mae is a 6-year-old girl, and one day her and some of her friends from the neighborhood, they lived in a tenant community, a very poor community, and they'd walk to this church by themselves. Or if Hattie Mae and some of her friends were outside of this church, it was Grace Baptist Church. That's probably why we're in Baptist today. Grace Baptist Church in Philadelphia. If some of her friends were outside of Hattie Mae White and her friends, and she was crying upset, and a minister came walking by. His name was Russell H. Conwell, Conwell, and asked what was going on. And she was upset. She says, the church, there's not enough room for me in there. The church is not big enough. And he looked at her and saw her clothing being tattered and worn, and maybe she needed to have her shoulders sewed on, on her coat and stuff. And he kind of figured it, well, he literally put her on top of his shoulders and walked inside the church Sunday school and found her a place to be. And this incredible friendship grew up. And by the way, I know the media covers stories now about ministers and priests and ugly, horrible stories. This is a great, pure story, a beautiful story of a minister whose heart went out to a young child who just wanted to go to church. Hattie Mae went home that day and told her parents, I guess her church parents did not go to church with her, but that she was praying that God would help them build a bigger church, a bigger Sunday school, so all her friends in her neighborhood could go to. Well, Russell Conwell, the pastor, built a great friendship with this young child, but sadly, about a year and a half, 2 years later, she was 6 when he met her, so I guess she was 7.5, whatever. Her parents approached him and said her daughter had died in one of the tenant projects. They found her, and she had diphtheria. And back then, there weren't clinics for all the poor people. It wasn't a hospital for them. And it was sad, and asked him, Reverend Conwell, if he would do the service. And when they moved the body, this little envelope came out. There was a red, kind of cracked purse, a little envelope there, a sheet in there, and it came out. There was a little handwriting of a note from Hattie Mae. It said she had money there to help, quote, to help build bigger church. To help build bigger church so more children can go to Sunday school. And inside was 57 cents. And of course, the minister at Conway asked the parents, where did this come from? He said, well, she would do errands for people. They'd say, hey, we need to go to the store, get some milk and bread, and she'd go get it, and they'd give her a shiny penny. Now, back then, you had to understand, minimum wage is probably about 20, 25 cents an hour. So what she was doing and being poor and saving that money for the church for a bigger Sunday school was a huge thing. But he did the service, and then Conwell went to his church board and shared about those 57 cents, became 57 pennies of faith of this young 6-year-old girl and how she had died. Well, what happened, they asked for a church fundraiser, and people wanted to buy those pennies. And those 57 cents became $250 a donation. People were bidding on them. If you look at it in modern time, we're talking about $5 for every penny. That'd be like if you had an auction for $1 and I gave you $500, okay? It was 500 to 1. So those 57 pennies went for $250. Quite an incredible thing. And they created the society, the Wyatt Mite Society, like the Widow's Mite. It goes Wyatt, W-I-A-T-T, her last name, to help grow more money. But that 57 cents suddenly became $250. And the first thing it did was Conwell wanted to have more ministries of faith. So they got a building there, I think a 2 or 3 story little house there, and they wanted to begin a little college. It was called Temple College, where they would train young men to be ministers of the gospel. And I tell you this story because the neighbors would make fun of those men. They'd say at nighttime they'd be in the top story, and you could see the lights or candles up there, and you could hear them practicing their sermons and practicing their Greek and the Hebrew, and they called them the night owls, the owls, because they'd be up late at night. Those young ministers in training at Temple College, which is founded by, of course, Pastor Russell Conwell, they'd be up late at night with the lights on, practicing their Greek and Hebrew and their sermons, and they call them the owls. Well, because of Hattie Mae, the board also had a vision and a prayer, and you got to have a vision of perhaps a clinic for all the poor people in the neighborhood like Hattie Mae. She died of diphtheria when they found her, and they found her in one of the tenant buildings where she had died. And again, when they rolled her over, they found this bag and a cracked red purse with the 57 cents. But their hope was to build a clinic there. Their story ran in a local newspaper, and apparently a realtor came to their church board and Pastor Conwell and said that he wanted to sell a parcel of land there for that clinic. And of course, the board said, well, we're familiar with the area. Our board cannot afford that land. He said, what do you mean? Well, we cannot afford that land. We cannot even afford a down payment for that land. And the realtor said, I read the article in the paper. You have the money. And they said, no, we don't. He said, yes, it will cost you, are you ready for this, my friends? 57 cents. Wow. Well, the result was the Good Samaritan Clinic. It later became the Good Samaritan Hospital. But let me end the story there because it's a story of incredible faith of this young 6-year-old girl who never saw what she did. But that 57 cents of Hattie Mae White, it became a great big Sunday school, which now Philadelphia, hundreds of kids go to every week. Every kid gets in from the neighborhood to that Sunday school. It started a new college for ministers. And that college became a university which at least 80,000 people have gone through. You may have heard of it. It's called Temple University. And that clinic was called the Good Samaritan Clinic, became Good Samaritan Hospital, and now became part of the Temple University Medical School and Hospital, Temple University Hospital. It all began with 57 cents of faith. Faith. Again, Hattie Mae White reminds me of the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1, where all these great heroes of faith, they had faith for what they believed in, but they never actually got to see it. But he still had faith. Well, Hattie Mae had faith in a larger Sunday school. That was her faith. That was her 57 cents faith. But let me tell you what it did Now there's a church. It was originally called Grace Baptist. Now it's Temple Baptist. The church is over 5,600 people. Wow. Began with 57 cents. Oh, and by the way, you want to guess who the mascot is of Temple University? Again, now there's a Temple University, there's a Temple Law School, there's a Temple University Hospital. It all began with 57 cents of faith. And the mascot of the Temple University, the Owls. The Owls. Remember those young men who went to the top floors and they were practicing their sermons, they're practicing their Greek and Hebrew at night, and they called them the Owls, the Night Owls? Well, there's also a large Sunday school that's been built there too. Well, now they're known as the Temple University Owls. This is Ken Mercer of Mercer Moments in American History. Today's program was 57 Cents of Faith. The story of actually two people, of Hattie Mae Wyatt, W-I-A-T-T, a 6-year-old child, and a young minister at that time named Russell H. Conwell, and what they meant to each other, and what 57 cents of faith did. Always end by asking, if you enjoyed today's program, please hit the like or subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything, but it's the only way we can grow with new sponsors. And always give a shout out to one college or one state. Well, this time it's all the Baptist colleges in every state across our nation. Pray for those young men and women who love God and love their country. Pray for those people who of great American values, because in today's political environment, whether you're at a Baptist university or somewhere else, they need our encouragement. They need our prayers. I've always believed, and this is a great example, 57 cents of faith, that the strength of America, it's always been our faith and our values, coupled with our worship. In our country, our faith and values and worship has made us sometimes so powerful, so invincible. And it's taken us times where our country may have been going down the wrong way, but put us back on that straight and narrow trail. And 57 cents of faith reminds me that in a place called the United States of America, in God, we still trust. In God, we still trust. Thank you. God bless you.